Well, here's a little project that I completed recently, and this is a Wolf VR5 valve refacer, and these were actually made by Wolf in India. If I focus in on the bottom line there. And until recently they were still listed. These are pretty old machines. They're very hard to find information on. You know, most stuff these days you can find manuals, you can find parts. People always seem to be struggling to get stuff for these. They're moderately common and they sometimes fetch quite a lot of money. I paid very little for this. I think I paid about £50, and a friend of mine collected it for me. I basically dismantled it and cleaned it and did little else. And it didn't have its original belts, and the belts are something that people, when you do find information online, it's usually asking about where you get belts and being told, oh yes, there's a place in Australia that does them, but they're really expensive. Well, these are 20mm wide, 1mm standard flat belts. I got them, I think, from Bearings R Us, and they were about £10 each. There's one for the workhead, and I'll run it up for you. These are quite noisy. It's a brushed shunt wound motor with a reduction gearbox, spur gearbox, and the main drive motor is also a brushed motor, and probably can't see the belt, but that's the crowned upper pulley. The motor's down in the base here, and again, not a quiet motor arrangement. See, it's got a coolant arrangement, and there is an idler pulley that the belt wraps around that drives a pulley here, and that drives via a round section belt down to the water pump and the sump at the back. And the first belt on this to fail when I initially got it was the original round section belt, and this is a somewhat temporary arrangement. This is silicone rubber tubing, and I've just used a bit of plastic tubing as a joiner. But it's working okay. I'll get around to getting some proper round thane belting and joining it. Mostly you see these with a wire wheel mounted on this end, and there should be a cover plate to stop debris getting in, so it should have a clearance hole for the spindle and then bolt in. So if I mount a wire wheel up, I'll bother to make that plate as well. So see, we've got a broken handle here, which I'm going to deal with at some stage. This is a quick action to sweep the valve across the wheel, and then there's a fine pitch for the infeed. Obviously got the various angles. It's set at 45 degrees, and there is a tapered pin to lock it at 45 degrees. and I think there's a 30 and a 15 for back cutting the valve, but that's a Marini 350 inlet valve in there, and it's too small to do any back cutting. Something that I've noticed is this piece is almost always missing. In fact, I have only seen one in a picture that had its original diamond dresser mount, and the only other time I've seen one is on eBay. Someone was selling a page from a magazine which was advertising these things, and you can see in the advert this arrangement. This is fairly close to what was originally on there. I had a mounted diamond, and I've simply made up the bracket, and in use it would be swung around, put in from the other direction, and then you can address the wheel. The wheel was the factory original, and just how old this is I don't know. I don't think they really went much beyond the 70s in the UK. I'm trying to get another wheel. This wheel's got some chipping damage on the edge. I've dressed the face and it grinds nicely, but I really want to get another wheel for it. I can probably dress this face back, but I'm going to take a bit of the life out of the wheel. It does a very nice job. I've just had a recent job where I had to recover a valve with a slightly bent head due to a worn guide, and the valve seat and the valve had just gradually become distorted. It was only slight, but enough to stop it sealing properly after new guides were put in, so I had to recut the seat and reface the valve. I have seen references to a rocker refacing attachment, and I have seen one picture of a cabinet mounted machine that has an accessory bolted onto this face, hanging off this end with a cup type grinding wheel, which I presume was the rocker refacing assembly, but it wasn't a high enough resolution picture to see any particular detail. Anyway, I'm quite pleased to have got this up and running, and it's another tool in the engine rebuilding armoury. Oh, I should mention I was just trying to get this back together to do this valve refacing job, and I'd run it up in testing, and then went away and left it plugged in, and it was sitting down on the floor down there, because this is very heavy. It's all cast iron, and it's about all I can do to lift it. But after about 10 minutes of being plugged in, there was a very loud bang and nasty sizzling noises, and I went and cut the power, and a noise suppression capacitor had obviously reached its end of life and exploded and dribbled wax onto the floor, and put a bit of a burn mark in a piece of carpet I had down there. But I'm not too worried about electrical interference out here, so at the moment it's got no suppression caps, but I'm sure I'll sort that out later. It could do with a little bit more rewiring. All the wiring is original, other than the new power cable on it. But all in all, a useful bit of equipment.